Hello everyone, this is Darker Joe, and today I'm gonna do my video for my thoughts on Schniel. I was planning to upload a video yesterday about it, but I was like, I'm gonna remake the video because I got too ranty, and I'm probably gonna be a little more ranty in this one. I'm probably a bit ranty in this one too, but so basically, Schniel is a Taurus, I think it was, yeah, Taurus Soul Weaver, or with the stats, so 655 defense. 5,340 HP, which actually is already included the 10% max health he gets in his passive. So it's not 5,340 plus 10% more, because he has the same stat line as Ahmed and as Frida, and they have 4,855 HP. So that 10% HP just allows him to have 5,300. 117 speed, 30 attack resistance, and he gets health percent main for himself, and then he gets attack for his party. So we'll go the same way that they do in the video. We'll talk about this part, his passive. So his passive gives you increased health, which we saw, gets 5,300 now. After an enemy uses a skill, when an ally is afflicted with poison or venom, it dispels all debuffs from the caster and activates Cleanse. It can only be activated once every once every turn. Cleanse dispels all debuffs from all allies and grants immunity for one turn before resetting the skill cooldown of his S3. So this basically means that if your opponent uses Death to Array and uses S2 or anything actually, well, no, S1 doesn't actually. His S1 doesn't actually do venom, so unless you have S2. So yeah, if your opponent has a Death to Array and Death to Array does S2 or S3, you basically can get this to proc off. And like, because obviously venom gets S2 gets pestilence to everyone, which gets venom. So yeah, so Death to Array cannot afford to really use S2 or S3 unless you want to practice early or whatever. But like, so the S3 attacks all enemies, gives defense buff to the allies for 2 turns, and then increases the combat readiness of himself by 50%. And then if you hit, it does fixed damage of 4,000, and then it goes up by 4,000 for every time, up to 2 times. So basically, the first time you do it, it's 4,000, and then you do it 8,000, and you do it 12,000 if you're able to hit it 3 times, which is a 4-turn cooldown. So, I mean, if your opponent isn't using Death to Array, I think this unit isn't going to be that good at all. And that's the problem. Like, I think he'd be pretty good into stopping Death to Array, or at least kind of like be a very big hindrance for him. But if your opponent doesn't have Death to Array, he's kind of worthless, because like, attacks all enemies. He's not going to be a damage dealer, so who cares what the damage you do? In fact, attacking all enemies now will proc all former counter units, and will proc, like, you know, Elena or Angel of Light, or insert any other unit that can counter AoEs. Gives defense buff to all allies for 2 turns, which defense buff is nice, especially on a fast unit, but then you're just going to get stripped. Either your opponent's going to have some way to strip it, or your opponent's just going to have some kind of pen unit in there. Because like with how strong this meta, with how much, with how very high and spammy like pen damage units are, like you still run into Genua, there's still like Senya still just completely doesn't care about defense. There's still Last Rider Crowd. There's still, you know, Blood Moon Haze, Laya. Pretty much most of the meta unit either don't really care about defense because they're pen already, or they're just injury. So it's like whatever. Defense buff isn't really super insane. It's like, I mean, it's good against like BBK teams, but like BBK teams are generally going to have some strip aways and some defense breaks and stuff, so it's like, okay. And this doesn't cleanse you at all too. So if your opponent goes before you and hits you with unbuffable, he doesn't cleanse unless your opponent hits you with venom or poison. So it's like, okay, if you get hit by like Luna hits you with unbuffable, well then you can't get the defense buff. So it's like, okay. And then the S1 is attacks the enemy, dispels 1 debuff from 1 ally, and if you soul burn it, it dispels 1 debuff from all allies. Pretty much this is the same exact as like Kizuna. In fact, you know what? I think personally, so obviously if your opponent is using Death to Array, then yes, you'd want Schniel is pretty solid. But if your opponent isn't using Death to Array, I honestly see more value in Kizuna. Like Kizuna I has more value because like the same exact S1. I would rather have the heal than just 10% max health, because the heal can heal the allies and stuff, and then attack buff and barrier, and it gives speed to self. Like that's pretty decent. I'm not saying Kizuna good, but I'm just saying like if I think Kizuna is a better unit over Schniel if there is no depth to array. And yes, you go ahead and make fun of me for saying that, but like, because like, okay, so the only thing left on it is the 4,000 damage. It's a 4-turn cooldown. If your opponent isn't using venom or poison, you're not getting the resets for this, which means it's gonna be 4 turns so you do it again. And 4,000 isn't that crazy, especially when you add mitigation in there. If they have an Arias, it's like, oh, congrats, you did 3,000 damage. I mean, and then you gotta wait 4 turns the next time you do it. I mean, yes, you could say, oh, well, you could do it like Schniel with Laya and like Last Red of Crowd to reduce the cooldown even more. But it's like, okay, then you'll just be 8,000, which then they can if the team is being super tanky, like people kept saying stuff to me when I said like I thought tech ML was pretty good, but they're like, okay, well then that's just 15,000 damage with ML. Your opponent's gonna have 30,000 HP units or near 30,000 HP units. It's like, well, if they're saying Techron is bad even with 15,000 AoE damage, which again isn't hard to proc, especially with how many people in this game have extra turns. Even a 3-turn, that means it's going to take you like 12 turns if there's no Death Deal Array to hit that 12k. And that's going to be even harder for him to survive than for like, Techron. So, yeah. If people are, that's what I'm saying. I think this unit is solid. This unit is good if there's a Death Deal Array, but if there isn't no Death Deal Array, and that's not to say that. And before anyone says anything, it's like, okay, well, that means that this unit's gonna like be an ultimate counter to Death Deal Array. It's like yes and no, because it's not gonna stop people from picking Death Deal Array. They're just gonna be forced to not pick him first pick anymore. Because the amount of matches I've played in this past like 3 or 4 days, it's been almost guaranteed. Like I pre-banned Fire Flan, and there's immediately first pick Death Deal Array every game. Like Death Deal Array is picked every game first pick against me. I'm like, seriously. The only thing he is gonna do is make people stop picking Death Deal Array as first pick, and then they're gonna pick him as like 4 or 5. Which means it'll be way harder for you to get a time to actually pick him. Because if they pick Death Deal Array the 5th pick, like, okay, well then you're forced to pick him. They're just going to post-ban it, and then you're screwed because you have no counters to Death Deal Array then. So it's not really going to stop him. It's just going to stop anyone who might have Death Deal Array in Guild War defense or Arena defense, or it's going to stop him from being picked early in the draft. That's just the only thing he's really going to do. And I feel bad for anyone who actually, like, was really, really looking forward to using him, but like, because there are people who are like who've been wanting him as a hero for a long time, and it's like he finally comes out and he's just a super niche that stops one specific unit. Sure, that unit is probably one of the most abused units in the game, but like that's just, if your opponent isn't picking that unit, he's just kind of mid, honestly. Yes, you could see some value in the fact he gets 50% CR push, and he could do 4,000 scaling fixed damage. But again, like I said, 4,000 fixed damage isn't really all that crazy when your opponent's going to be in the like 20,000 plus HP, and then when you count mitigation, that 4,000 goes down to like, what, 3,000? It's not hard to just heal off of that or just barrier through it. If they have protection set, your 4,000 does nothing. Because their protection set basically blocks the first S3. Then you gotta wait 4 turns for another one. And then yes, you could cycle pretty, okay with 50% CR push, but like, and then increase defense. But again, most units in this game now, especially openers, have some way of strip. So they're gonna strip the defense buff, or they're just gonna be a unit that has ignore pen, or ignore defense. So it's like, he doesn't really do anything really. That If this was 3 turns cooldown, maybe I could see it being good, because then you could, with the increased CR on the first time you use it, and it's like 2 turns you go through, it's not so bad. I could see 2. If it was 3 turns, that's not bad, especially if you wanted to go for like maybe go for like Candlestick, and then you could get some real good value of it, and you get to 12,000 pretty quickly, a lot more quicker. But like, yeah, and then again, the only units that have Venom is Deathly Ray or Green Sharoon, and then I guess one of the artifacts, Bubble Maker, could potentially proc it, and then Poison, it's just Stene. I mean, there might be more units that have Poison, but like Carice, but like we're talking about units that can be used in PvP, so. I don't think he has his values very good outside of fighting Deathly Ray, and no one's going to first pick him anymore. So it's like you're just going to be kind of forced to last pick him, and then you're just going to get post ban. And if you try to play him outside of fighting Deathly Ray, his value isn't very good. Kind of like, and this is why I feel bad for these people who actually really, really wanted to use Schniel. Because this is exactly the same situation I had to deal with when both of these units came out. Now, so Dilibet and Hyufine has been like my second or third favorite, like Epic 7 exclusive unit. Dilibet has been my favorite exclusive unit. So, I say exclusive as in like not collab units type of thing. We're talking about just actual unit. So, when Dilibet had when her ML version, when Designer Dilibet first came out, she was absolutely garbage the first time she came out. Like, she was a unit that they specifically made to counter one combo. And that was back then when Fairy Tail Tenebria first came out. It was Fairy Tail Tenebria and Cerise. Every single game you fought and every single defense you fought had Fairy Tail Tenebria plus Cerise. Every time. So they gave us Designer Dilibet, which was designed to stop that one combo. Because back then her kit was so trash. Like, obviously she had these silence in the S1. She did start off with the 50% CR, with the 50% fighting spirit, but she used to only gotten 10 fighting spirit per debuff. And then when she consumed it, she would push herself up, but she wouldn't get defense buff or immunity, obviously. But like, she would push up, and then she would only push up and just cleanse herself, and that's it. She wouldn't get defense buff. So she would have absolutely no damage. I don't remember what part they had, what part they even kept on from the original. So basically, you needed to have 10 debuffs for Dilibet to proc the very first time, and then 20 debuffs afterwards. So she had absolutely no cycling. In fact, if you go back and look at Designer Dilibet's like showcase, and you actually look at the showcase, the only reason why Designer Dilibet even procced off of the Cerise plus Fairy Tail Tenebria combo was because it was on counter set. So it got lucky counters, which allowed her to proc the cleanse. So that was how bad she was. And then but either way, she did kind of stop the Fairy Tail Tenebria plus Cerise combo. But of course, if they didn't pick both of them together, then Dilibet was useless. But and then when they stopped playing both of them together, she was so useless that I think she was considered like the worst ML5 for like a year or two, until they finally buffed her. This is back when her buff was like before her recent buff, obviously. So then she became a decent unit. She became a pretty solid unit, and then obviously the buff she had like last month or a few weeks till last month, whatever it was. Then obviously the buff she just recently got, she actually became she's a very, very strong unit now. Now she's a great unit to get. Probably one of the best MLs right now, honestly. But like, yeah, so it took her 2 buffs and like 4 or 5 years to allow her to be to what she's at now, because she was specifically built to counter one combo, and that was it. Same thing with Holiday Hyufine, another one of my favorite units to use, and I use her quite often in RTA as well. But on release, she was specifically built to counter Green Passar. That was her only purpose. Basically was just to counter Green Passar. And after Green Passar stopped being picked, she had no use. She was benched and no one used her for like a year or so. Then eventually she got buffed, and then she got buffed again, and now it's where she's at now. Now she's a solid unit. I think she's pretty solid. Some people still think she's really, really weak. I mean, compared to some of the meta units, yes, I could definitely see that, but like, she's a pretty solid unit now. But it took her like 2 buffs and like 3 or 4 years to get where she's usable. I think even in this meta, I think she's usable. She's not amazing, but she's a usable unit that can counter like C Phantom Politis. That's my main reason I use her, is to counter C Phantom Politis. And potentially Luna, but Luna just presses S2 and not presses S3 on there. But like, it's good. It's a good counter into Luna on like Guild War defense and like Arena defense for anyone who uses Luna. But like, yeah, she's a solid unit now. You could play for sure. Not super strong, but like, you know, it just took her like 3 or 4 years plus 2 buffs. That's exactly the same situation that's gonna happen with him. He's gonna do very good with potentially countering Death to Array. He's gonna be very solid. But people are going to get around it by just not first picking Death to Array anymore. They're going to pick him later in the draft. So you can't. So it's very hard to pick him and another cleanser or something. Because if they pick Death to Array 4th or 5th pick, then you have to like, oh, I have to have two counters into it now. Because if I just pick him, they'll just ban him. So it's like, okay, I'll pick him and ML Sharoon. And then they'll probably decide which one is the worst to fight, and then the ban which one they think it's the worst one to fight. But that's just how I feel this unit's going to go. And then if that, and so they're so they're going to pick Death to Array 4th or 5th pick, or just don't pick him at all in that game, and then like, well, I can't pick Schniel. He's kind of useless. I mean, I don't know. This isn't like the situation where like people are complaining about Mo Lua. And Mo Lua is like, I always thought Mo Lua was a solid unit, but I think she had a lot of counters and stuff where she's just like she's just balanced, right? She's a good unit. She's balanced. Maybe she's really good if you had a really good pickup, and she's a solid 4th or 5th pick. This isn't like, this is a good unit into one unit, and I mean eventually they're gonna add more poison and venom units in the future. Then maybe you could see more use of using him, but like, I'll still pull him because I want to get I have every unit in the game, so I might as well pull him. And plus, again, Death to Array is used so often that if they do start first picking him, you could still ban protect him and like, well, okay, at least I still don't know about Death to Array. So yeah, I don't know. I just think that I really, really hate when Smilegate does this whole, oh, I'm going to create a problem and then sell the solution like they've been doing, because then you get units that are super freaking niche into dealing with that problem, and then when that unit isn't being picked, or when that unit finds a way to get past this solution they have, the unit is useless outside of that one unit. For an example, when Huoyang was super broken, and they like completely changed like Ice Collie, which again she wasn't used anyways, but like they made her into like a Pacific unit that could kind of defeat Huoyang, or at least other fire units, I guess. I mean, Huoyang got nerfed, so Huoyang's not as useful anymore. I mean, she's still viable, but you don't see Huoyang anymore really. The Ice Collie is just like, okay, well, I'm just sitting here with my weird kit now that was somewhat usable into Huoyang, but now it's going to be useless into everyone else. I just wish that if they really thought Death to Array was that much of a problem, I wish they just nerfed him and then give him an actual solid normal kit. Give him a normal, Soul Weaver kit. Just something. Because now if Death to Array isn't... if Death to Array actually stops being picked as often, then you just like, okay, well then this unit is useless. It doesn't even work. Like, doesn't this like not even work in PvP? Oh no, it actually works in PvE. Okay, so there's some uses in PvE, sure. So maybe you can make him a PvE unit, because like defense buff in PvE is not so bad. Fixed damage does not specifically say it has to be a hero, and does not look like this has to be a hero, right? When an enemy uses a skill, okay, so yeah, it's solid into PvE stuff. So worst case, he's a solid PvE unit. I know there's a few people who do poisons, and stuff in the lab. So, you know what? Solid unit in lab, I guess, afterwards. But does people really wanted their a unit they really been looking for to just be nothing but a lab unit, basically, or a when if Death to Array is not picked as often because of him? Which again is not going to happen. They're just going to pick Death to Array 4th or 5th pick. So yeah, that's my thought on him. 20 minutes, that's fine. Because last video I tried to do this was like 30 minutes, and I was kind of ranting a bit more than that and stuff. But this is just my general thought of it, though. Like, I think basically too long didn't hear. No, if you didn't watch the whole thing, or yeah, but you did. But I'll make a post as well saying, like, you know, if anyone who doesn't think about anyone who hasn't watched the whole video, I'll go like, basically sum it down. He's a solid unit. He's gonna be pretty good into Death to Array. But people are just going to stop picking Death to Array's 1st pick anymore. They're going to pick him as 4th or 5th pick. And then you're going to be like forcing this whole 50-50 ban on like, are they going to ban my Schniel? Should I ban Death to Array just in case? Type of thing. Because they're not going to pick him early. Not anymore. Because this unit and obviously other counters and stuff, they're not going to pick him early. So they'll just pick Death to Array 4th or 5th pick, or maybe even 3rd pick. Especially if they're last, especially if they get their 3rd pick last after you, they might. But yeah, I just don't like this super niche, specifically unit that counters one thing or one unit or one combo, because that just means that 99% of the time, if you're not fighting that one combo or one unit, you're not going to be usable. So yeah. That's my thought. I'll see you guys next video.